Everyone, and welcome. This is Rob Field, the director of Center for Spiritual Wisdom, and I'm going to kind of recreate the highlights of the past 6 to 9 months at Center for Spiritual Wisdom, and also give you a little preview, a little glimpse of things to come. This was a presentation I made in person last night on May the 25th at our thank you to our supporters. And so, since you're watching this, that probably means you couldn't be with us, but I would love to have you hear some of what have been highlights in the past and a glimpse of what's to come. This will take about 17, 18 minutes, so I hope you'll hang in there with us so you can be caught up on everything that's happening. So we began 2023 with money in the bank. It was such a great feeling. We used this image in our January e-news article. I think the caption was "Music to Our Ears, 2022 year-end drive meets our goal of $20,000. Many of you were part of that success. Thank you. Thank you so much for helping us get there. Early in this new year of 2023, we welcomed Sally Roush. Sally is our assistant for communications and administration. She just feels to me like she kind of fell from the stars into our midst. She really hit the ground running. She's a great fit for what we're about, and we're so glad that she's going to be able to be with us through the summer and perhaps beyond. We'll see how things pan out, but that's my hope anyway. Sally joins our already amazing team. Here is Corey Gaffney, our marketing specialist here in the photo. But not pictured here on this slide are all the other people, our board members, our many associates who are photographed with their little bios on the Our Team page, which you can find on our website, other participants and presenters. And so there's a really big group of people. There's a heck of a lot more people than just Rob Field who make things happen here at the center. One of those groups I mentioned are our associates, and we welcomed some new associates in 2023. On the left, Laura Collins; in the middle, Brandon Cook; and on the right, Flora Brook. Some of you might remember that Flora served as our Blue Ridge Service Corps intern on our staff from the fall of 2021 into the spring of 2022. And it was such a great fit that we wanted to keep her on. So we made her an associate probably late 2022. In fact, Flora and I co-led a book study, which you'll hear more about in a minute. From time to time here at the center, we always revisit our mission and ask ourselves, is there more we can do to help promote what we're about here at the center? And because we're a practice-based spirituality center, we decided late last year that in 2023 we would have a new monthly feature in our e-news. And so each month, at the end of the newsletter, you will find the spiritual practice of the month, in which one of our associates focuses in on a particular spiritual practice, tells you about it, tells you how to adopt it for your own, and gives a link to further information somewhere on the web. So if you haven't discovered that, if you're new to our e-news, just know that keep scrolling down the page for the spiritual practice of the month. A Little About a Lot is our monthly online discussion offering, which is topical. That is spearheaded by Brandon Cook and Terry Decker, who's one of our speakers this evening. The graphic needs to be updated because it's now the third Thursday of each month on Zoom from 7 o'clock to 9 p.m. We delve into topics that sometimes others might find a little too out there, a little too edgy. One of the ones that we had recently that really captivated my imagination was the one called Comedy as Prophecy. And one of the working titles for that was Can America Still Take a Joke? And it most provocatively looked at the role of some of our best stand-up comedians as social prophets to encourage us to take a look at maybe some things that we wouldn't always be comfortable taking a look at if someone didn't provoke or push us into it. So if you're not familiar with A Little About a Lot, it's definitely worth checking out. From time to time, Center for Spiritual Wisdom is happy to partner with various organizations in the community to bring forward topics that we think are of interest. And so earlier this year, we focused on the spirituality of Gen Z. This is a photograph of 3 of the 5 students from Brevard College who I invited to form a panel. And so this took place on 2 Sunday mornings at one of our local faith communities. And these very articulate, very bright young people gave us their perspective on religion and spirituality. And if you have the initial thought, which I did before I got to know them, that maybe the spirituality of Gen Z is a lot like ours when it comes to religion and spirituality, we definitely need to rethink that assumption. And they helped us see that. We had some of these students return for an episode of A Little About a Lot, and we learned a lot from them. In February, Flora Brooke and I co-led a book study focusing on this book on the left, Dr. John Collins' book, What Are Biblical Values? Not just assuming we know what biblical values means necessarily, and not necessarily assuming that in all cases the Bible supports what we think biblical values are. Very eye-opening study that we did over about 7 weeks, and we had a group of about 10 folks who joined us for that. On the right is the photo we used to publicize a 3-week series, Spirituality as Aging as a Spiritual Practice. And that was presented by Dr. Marianne Iyer, one of our associates. And boy, did she do a great job as usual. I was able to attend at least part of the first couple of sessions, and you could just feel the interest and the enthusiasm of participants for the topic. We had our second of our Come One, Come All public in-person movie events at the Co-Ed Theater in downtown Brevard. And this time it was Gratitude Revealed, a wonderful film by Louis Schwartzberg about the power of gratitude for our own vitality and wellness. Last year, it was Mission Joy, a documentary focusing on the wonderful special friendship between the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu. That time we filled the Co-Ed Theater, and this time we nearly did, and there will be more movies to come. One of the wonderful aspects of us moving beyond the worst phase of the COVID pandemic is to be able to return to some in-person programming. And one of my first loves is training and teaching people the spiritual practice known as centering prayer, which is a form of contemplative meditation from my tradition. Well, here's a group who got together in late March at a small retreat center in Cedar Mountain, North Carolina. And as you can tell from the expression on everyone's face, there was a lot of joy there. We spent most of our time in silence, in silent meditation, but in between, during the breaks and during meals, there was this really palpable sense of joy that just welled up. So much so that at one point, I'll show you the outtake from the photo session, some people thought they were going to try out for the Rockettes, as you can see, but I told them they should just probably keep their day job. More recently, this month, in early May, we welcomed to Brevard the Tibetan Buddhist monk Khentrel Lodro Tay. And this was in partnership with some of his students who live in our region and also with our local bookstore, Highland Books. A wonderful presentation by this master teacher. And he has a new book on the right called The Power of Mind. I am embarrassed to tell you that in the lead up to this event, some of the organizers asked me my opinion of how many people we should expect. And in order to try to help them have some realistic expectations, after all, this was going to be a weeknight. I didn't know how many people in our area would be interested in the topic. I said, well, you know, honestly, this is the kind of event that if about 30 people showed up, I'd probably be pleased. Well, I'm so happy to tell you I was really wrong. This was the scene at the Mary C. Jenkins Community Center about 10 or 12 minutes before the event started. And by the time it started, there were about 20, 25 more people in the room, a total of 100 or more. Folks were lining the walls and some even sitting on the floor to hear this master teacher and his translator. It was just a wonderful, mesmerizing event for me. And I think for us at the center, helped remind us how much hunger and interest there is in someone like this who can bring forward the riches of his tradition. To bring it back to offerings of the Center for Spiritual Wisdom, my colleague Paula Benton, photographed in the center there, and I are in the middle of a 5-week series for beginners who are just learning about the Enneagram as a powerful tool for spiritual growth. And that's something Paul and I do every year. And in the fall, we also do an intermediate level group learning series. I'm happy to tell you we filled up that series, and it's something we'll continue to offer at the center. So that's a little bit about where we've been in the last 9 months or so. So where are we going? Well, I'm so glad you asked. We're going to be welcoming this fall a new member of our staff, a Blue Ridge Service Corps intern. His name is Colin Rice. He has just graduated from the University of the South in Sewanee, Tennessee, where I did some of my graduate work. And Colin is so fun to talk to because he is just so enthusiastic about getting here and beginning his work with us. He too, like Sally, will help us with communications and administration. We are nearly full in our fall pilgrimage going to the Aegean coast, following in the footsteps of St. Paul. We will be going to the coast of Greece and Turkey, visiting sacred sites and learning about a lesser known aspect of this well known Christian architect of Christianity, his mystical side. And Father Richard Rohr, that wonderful teacher, has convinced me that unless we know about Paul the mystic, we really can't understand St. Paul, the writer of those many letters in the New Testament. And so we will be learning about that, getting closer to Paul's own world when we go. As I mentioned, we're nearly full. There's a couple of spaces remaining just in case you want to inquire about that. You should probably do that very soon. Also in the fall, we'll be having once again our Wisdom of World Religions 6-week series. We will focus on a different religion each week and learning about those religions as conveyors of wisdom for the rest of us, even though we're not followers of that particular religion. What can we, as seekers, learn from these great traditions? And as I mentioned earlier, Paula Benton and I will do an intermediate level Enneagram group learning series, and that will be coming in the fall. Not yet announced, but we want you to be the first to hear about it. We are going to have some presenters, some very gifted presenters. The fellow in the red shirt is the former bishop of Episcopalians in Western North Carolina. His name is Porter Taylor, and I'm very proud to say a friend of mine. And he's going to come and speak about Christian mystics or mystical poets. We haven't quite worked that out. That should probably be on a Saturday sometime in the fall. We probably can't get the gentleman on the left, the Most Reverend Michael Curry, because you have to book him 2 or 3 years in advance at this point. He's so much in demand. But if you don't recognize the name or the face, he's the gentleman who did such a beautiful job as the preacher at Prince Harry and Princess Meghan's wedding a few years ago. We've got the photo of the Sassy Goose Retreat Center up in Cedar Mountain on the right to tell you that we will be returning there. We are talking about doing a couple of different retreats there, either this fall or early next year, one of which might be focused on eco-spirituality. What is it about nature and the contemplation of nature that can help our souls? And so stay tuned for more about that. I'm very happy to tell you that there are serious plans afoot for Center for Spiritual Wisdom to bring a big name speaker to our area sometime next year. On the left, we have the great Valerie Carr, who you might recognize perhaps from the title of her best-selling book, See No Stranger. Valerie is a social activist and a very, very enlightened spiritual teacher, bringing forth the riches of her own Sikh tradition. We would love to get someone like her, or perhaps Brian McLaren, the gentleman on the right, to come to our area. Brian McLaren has just been named the successor to Father Richard Rohr as head of the faculty for the Center for Action and Contemplation's Living School. And either one of those would make great speakers, and we have reached out recently to their people to inquire about the possibility of bringing them to our area. Stay tuned for more. The big reveal for you tonight, though, is not even that, as momentous as that would be. I'm so happy for you to be among the very first to hear that Center for Spiritual Wisdom in the coming years wants to return to one of the original visions that is really animated what we're doing. It's always been part of our vision to be a spirituality center for all seekers in our community, but it's also been part of our vision to have some kind of school that we would launch. So after a lot of discernment, a lot of prayer, a lot of reflection, I'm so happy to tell you that we will be pursuing a school for perennial wisdom. And I'll say more about what that is in a moment. First, a word about the gentleman in the hat. That is Rabbi Rami Shapiro. You may possibly have heard of him. He's a regular columnist with Spirituality and Health magazine. And Rabbi Rami is a big proponent of the perennial tradition. He has written a book on the subject. He's editor of an anthology of sacred texts under the umbrella of perennial wisdom, which is the founding philosophy of our own center. And it says that if you take a long, loving look at all of the great religions of the world, there really is an underlying commonality which you can discern in all of them. And so we are envisioning a 2-year school that would combine distance learning and in-person retreat learning, probably twice a year somewhere in our area, that would have faculty from all of the great religions of the world, teaching from their traditions, so that those of us who may not be followers of their particular religions can benefit from the wisdom and the practices of those traditions. So there's a group of us that have been meeting over the past couple of years. That's a discernment and visioning group. Their work culminated in a unanimous recommendation that we move forward, and now there is a development group that is working with me to make concrete plans to bring this to fruition and to make a serious formal proposal to charitable foundations and private philanthropists, because of course this would take some significant startup funds, probably for the first 2 or 3 years. So if you'd like to know more about that, please do get in touch with me. I would love to tell you more. Finally, just let me say thank you once again, dear donors. We cannot possibly begin to do what we do without you, without your participation, without your volunteer support, and without your financial gifts. Thank you, and thank you again.